You can go with that. Go with that.
So just so you're familiar with what we're going to be going over today, here's an agenda. So first, we'll briefly go over the methodology that we used to collect our findings, the economic impact, attracting talent, developing talent, retaining talent. And again, we have a Q&A session at the end, but if you have any questions that come up throughout the presentation, please feel free to ask in the moment. And actually someone is joining us right now, so I might wait just a moment. So for methodology, just to give you guys a high level overview, we had a very diverse set of responses. As you can see on the right-hand side, responses came from over 10 leading industries, companies ranging in size anywhere from 1 to over 1,000 employees. All types of tech roles, anywhere from contract, staff engineers, all the way up to CIOs. Employment statuses ranged from contractor, full-time employees, hiring managers, and again, leadership positions. So the way that we collected our surveys was with our about 20,000 contacts from our CRM. And then we also shared with our social media followers. We have a little over 18,000 followers on LinkedIn alone, and we shared our survey with them. So responses that we collected was over 50 diverse responses from all of those different avenues. And the survey took place in Q3, so very recent data here. And I will let Andrew go ahead and take over and discuss economic impact.
No, absolutely. I appreciate again everybody joining today. And as Ashley mentioned, we have kind of a small group here. So if you guys have questions, feel free to raise your hand or speak as we kind of go through this. But really the reason why we put this survey together was I was getting a little concerned about what we were going to be going into, right? We had during the dot-com boom bust era, the Great Recession, and I was like, oh my gosh, so should we put on a seatbelt and see where we're going to go this next round here? Inflation at 20-year high, that's obviously been a huge concern for a lot of people. Energy costs are high, food costs are high, but unemployment still remains low. And so what does that kind of mean? We had one customer in particular that was one of our larger customers that was going through big restructuring and even layoffs. And so we said, gosh, it'd be great to reach out to the network and find out what's happening with everybody. And so we appreciate all of those who participated and, to get some insights and then also share it with our network as well. So the good news is that the sky is not falling. 50% of the report and response we got back is that the economic climate has not had a negative impact on their overall business operations. In fact, 53% of those companies are still actively hiring, and only 28% of those companies have actually put a hiring freeze into place. Now, one thing I'll say too is that every month it seems like things are changing, right? So this is Q3 data. We'll see what the rest of the year looks like as well as into 2023. But let's look at the next slide, Ashley. So I think you guys might have seen some of this data that came out, was it 2 weeks ago, but GDP actually, we increased by 2.3%. I think everybody knows that recession is 2 consecutive quarters of negative decline. And this summer, things got a little bit rocky, but according to GDP, things kind of came back up. ITR Economics is one of the groups that I follow on the economic stage. And they kind of predicted early in the year that things were going to slow down, but we weren't going to go into a full-blown recession. If you look down at manufacturing production on the bottom right, the United States is actually the second largest manufacturer in the world. And as you can see, the findings, I think it's October, maybe it's September data, 4.7% is where it was at. So you can actually see it's kind of on the rise. So hopefully that's another good indicator that things are doing okay. But then, reaching out to our network, 20% of companies are actually adding projects to what they're working on. 40% are moving forward as planned. And kind of the messaging we're letting people know is that we've kind of had this hangover of, oh my gosh, unemployment is at all-time, lows, right? And so how do you attract talent in this market? Well, the companies that are having to make changes and make shifts and do cost reductions, or people are getting a little concerned, it's actually not a bad time to hire. And so I think that, we've had this hangover the past 12 or 18 months that, oh my gosh, it's just hard to find good people. What we're suggesting is that now may not be a bad time to just increase your recruiting efforts. And we'll jump into like some of the things that you can do to impact how you go about hiring. So let's look at the next slide. Top concerns among hiring managers today, as you can see, finding the right candidates for the open roles, budgets to attract the right candidates, and also retaining existing staff. Just to throw it out there to the community that's on this call, and we actually invited our entire team on this call as well, so if you guys have questions, but anybody have similar concerns or thoughts to this particular slide? If not, no worries, we can jump into it. Let's look at the next slide as well. So attracting talent, how can you attract top talent on your team? One of the biggest things that I've found is that, we're still in this age where we've got static job descriptions, right? Where it's just kind of bullet after bullet of what's on the job description itself. I've seen a lot of companies really try to build in their mission of what they're building at their organization. I know we've got National Multiple Sclerosis on the call. That's actually a very, you'd hope, an easy mission-driven conversation you can have to attract folks. But the reality is that only 22% of candidates left their last job to pursue a higher salary. So if you've got opportunities where you're working in a flexible work schedule, as you guys know, a lot of companies are trying to bring people back into the office, but hybrid seems to be the way forward for a lot of people. And I think, putting the information out there about growth opportunities for candidates, as well as other ways to attract folks in your job descriptions, maybe even your mission statement, it's a great way to let people know, this is a good opportunity that I want to try to pursue. Let's look at the next slide. So one of the things that I think a lot of people have had to realize is that trying to find those folks with that 5 to 10 years of experience, right? I mean, I think that used to be the old goal, and try to put as much as you possibly could into every position that was open, and realizing that it's hard to attract talent right now. So what we suggest is be a little bit more flexible with what you're hiring for. I mean, at the end of the day, technologies are going to change, especially if they're full-time roles. And kind of the 3 criteria that we suggest our clients look at is, can you work with the individual that's applying? Are they aligned to your company culture? And do they have the appetite to learn and grow? The opportunity cost not to fill your open position today, what kind of impact is that having on your organization? And if you can look at it more from a chance to bring in people, to grow them. The other part of that too is that when people feel like they're getting those growth opportunities, there's probably going to be more loyalty that's established and built. They're going to want to stay with you longer term. The people that are just chasing money, that's going to happen. I know that there's people out there that said, gosh, you know what, I've lost individuals that are making 30, 40, even 50% more. That is happening out there. But at the end of the day, most people don't like change, don't like disruption. And if you can create an opportunity where people can grow within your own organizations, it's a great way to retain talent. Let's look at the next slide. So developing talent, we just kind of talked about that. What kind of educational opportunities are there with your organization? You guys are probably familiar with Guild Education. They're a Denver-based firm that is growing rapidly, working with the folks of like Amazon and places like that. But, is there educational opportunities that people can take advantage of? Maybe you can't increase salaries, but could you increase the training and development budget? Udemy is another organization out there, right, that's offering training. And one thing that I just haven't seen as much of lately, but hackathons, especially for the engineering teams. I mean, how do you build community amongst your teams? This is a great way to do that. If you're not familiar with the concept, basically, it's especially for engineering teams that are developing product, or maybe it could even be process or procedure, but divide your team, spend a day, maybe in some companies, they actually will do an entire week dedicated to the hackathon. And they'll present ideas to leadership about, new product ideas. Maybe again, it's process and procedures, but engage your team. I mean, they're the ones that are developing the culture. And if they feel like they've got input, again, a great way to retain talent. We're also, here at the Doyle Group, we believe big in giving back. And so even just this Friday, we're going to be out at the Colorado Food Bank of the Rockies as a team building exercise. But whatever you can do to kind of bring people together, it's just a great cultural way to build interest in the organization that you're running and leading. Other ideas, Slack channels. I know some people, especially for remote teams, we have actually developed a platform on Mighty Networks platform. It's called the Doyle Group Community, but it's basically a place where all of our consultants can kind of come together to share ideas, feel like they're a part of an organization or a part of a community. And again, just other ideas to try to keep people engaged while they're working. One comment I'll mention too, and people are talking about, okay, we got to try to get people back to the office. One of the big things that, sorry, saw Stacy's note come up, but one of the big things that I think a lot of employees are saying is, I will come back to the office, but what is the reason to coming back to the office? We just actually had a customer this past week, and they had a pumpkin carving contest. Again, if there's something to build culture and you can bring people back in, but if it's just, we need people back in the office just because, I think a lot of employees today are asking, what's the reason that I need to come in the office, and what's the value I get from coming in the office? So just some other ideas to think about. But anybody have any questions or maybe even just suggestions of what you guys are doing in your own companies to build culture or invest in trying to attract additional talent?
I have a comment. I always think that training talent is easier than trying to attract talent, because you already know what you have, interest in people, and they show interest in developing. It's always an easier equation than trying to attract new talent at a higher level or places where you could have trained people.
Thanks, Gene. Appreciate that. Anyone else? Now let's move to the next slide. So another thing that's really important about uncertainty, right, is that people, when there's uncertain times, what do? They fill that information full of negative energy, usually, if people aren't sure of what's going on. So the big takeaway that we heard from the survey is that it's very important to communicate to your teams. If you want to move to the next slide, I think we even have percentages on that. But 54% of employees found that communicating once per quarter is very helpful, and even one IT leader said that they actually meet on a monthly basis to go over all their financials. I think the thing that's important too is that we had one client in particular where they were very transparent about where the company was at, that sales were declining, and instead of people being scared and running, a lot of people came together and they said, listen, what can we do to improve efficiencies, help out? And there's just a lot more employee engagement. So I think when people feel like they're in the mix and aware of where a situation is, that they'll come together to create more value, versus I think the common thought is that the less we share, the less people will be scared or concerned. But I think people, again, just culturally, you understand that if things are going in the wrong direction, people get concerned. And again, they might look for other opportunities if you're not transparent about where things are at. Let's go to the next slide. And I think we're at Q&A already. So looking forward to just hearing additional thoughts or questions that anybody might have out there. Feel free to go to our website. We've got definitely more information out there as well. If you want to schedule some time with us, we're happy to have conversations about what we're seeing in the marketplace, just market data. If you guys are looking for new opportunities out there, please reach out to us if you're looking to build high-performing teams. That's what the Doyle Group does well. And I appreciate your time today. But just to open up for Q&A, I'd love just to hear what you guys are seeing out there with your own teams. I know we've got some leaders on this call, so Have you guys had any attrition? Are there concerns about it? Is, the concern about trying to, match salaries out there a big concern for you all? But let's open up for some Q&A.
Yeah, I'll go. This is Sean. My name is Sean Dunham. I'm product director at Sandata, and they're located in Long Island, New York. And I've been working there for about 4 years, and went from product manager to product director recently. So got some good upward movement. I'm seeing the challenges I'm seeing are there's been internal promotion, and those folks, and they don't like it. It's kind of strange. They end up taking on so much more responsibility that it's too much change for them. So we're trying to work in more opportunities for education. And so we've stepped up our game with education especially around agile methodologies and Scrum. And the other things we've done is look to that work-life balance, and we've increased our volunteerism. We've started a volunteer army to try and get folks outside of work, that work bubble, to really start thinking about their work-life balance and get better focus there. So those are some of the things we're trying to work on as we get closer to our yearly reviews. I think that there's definitely, internally we're worried because internal reviews, they typically are not a big percentage, to go up, every year by year. And with inflation, it's going to look even worse. So we're trying to build those other areas within our budget to educate more and give people those opportunities to grow if they want to. So some are thriving in that, but others have found that taking on responsibility from a manager level to a director level has been too much for them. They just didn't. It wasn't what they were hoping it would be, because it is a different level that you've got to think about and be prepared for.
Just out of curiosity, Sean, with the training that you guys have implemented, is that through specific programs or companies that might be interesting to share with everyone?
Yeah, we partnered with Agile Velocity, so I'm sure you're very familiar with them. And we spent a lot of time with trying to build some teams. We've taken a lot of businesses that we've kind of consolidated into ours, and we've acquired, and some of them had agile technology training or methodology training, but some of them didn't. So to start them on the right foot, we had brought in some consulting and really helped there. And we're also looking at expanding that, so we're focusing on specific areas. So specifically for my team, we've got product owners that we're trying to make sure that they understand what their expectations are. We're trying to build out the Scrum Masters, because we're really trying to break out product from running the business to a more new feature enhancement land. That a lot of situations I've been at, product is the be all end all. Like, go to product if you have a problem, and we're trying to break that out into a run the business path versus a new feature enhancement path. So we're improving the lives of our product team, and they're getting more innovative and more thinking about growing the business than they are placating the customers that we already have and fighting fires every day.
One thing I was going to bring up too is that I know a lot of companies are struggling with the fact that you're trying to hire in a very tight market. And what does that mean to the existing staff? And I don't know if that's kind of what you're talking about too, Sean, is that people are having to take on more and more work. Well, if that means that those folks might now be more interested in leaving because they can't keep up with the amount of work, that's just another thing you've got to, kind of weigh the balance up, right? Is do you bring in someone who's maybe less experienced that you can train and try to take things off their plate? Or do people have too much on their plate and they say, gosh, you know what, I've been trying to do this and trying to keep up, but I can't, I've got to leave. That's another concern that I think, a lot of our clients are having right now.
Yeah, and I think the only thing I would add is that there's a lot of ways to get to product. You could be a production support person and you start going toward a product path. You could be a salesperson, you could be a marketing person, you could be a product owner. And I think that's what happens, is that once you start getting involved in all the things you need to do for product, it might not be the job that you expected or you wanted. And so while the money looks great, at the beginning, the more you start realizing, oh, they want me to answer those questions, and I need to do this, and I need to be more aware. And so I just think some personalities struggle with product itself, because it's all encompassing, and you're talking to so many different groups every day, and sometimes it can be overwhelming, I think, if you're not ready to handle that. So I think that's what we're seeing in certain situations. It's stabilized, but at the beginning of the year we were seeing that a lot, where we had some promotions and people weren't lasting because they just couldn't hack the job. It was different.
Would you say it's a safe place for people to maybe raise their hand and say, "This, I'm overwhelmed and maybe I want to go back to my old role," or is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a safe place. I think, unfortunately, I don't think they think of that option. They just think, I just got to move on. I think, I don't think there's a way I can go back. And there obviously is. There's always people that excel in their role, and they should be commended for that. So that's fine. And I think some people don't think about going backwards. They take it as going backwards, which it's not, which is going to a better fit is really what's about.
Any other thoughts from anyone else? Are you guys experiencing attrition? And if so, what are you guys trying to do to combat that?
Andrew, I can kind of give perspective on what I'm seeing. For those of you I don't know, my name's Rhonda Cryer. I work in Denver, and I'm the EVP of technology for the National MS Society. So from an attrition perspective, I feel like we have been very fortunate, at least, I think in the society in general, but definitely in the technology department, we've seen very low attrition, which I'm very happy about. And we've actually, it's been interesting. We did a large reorganization of the department in March, and we're lucky enough to get some additional headcount. I think our bigger challenge is finding the right people to put into those roles. So I'm not seeing attrition, but I'm having a hard time filling some of the newer roles. We have had one of the trends that's been cool to see is recently we've had 3 people from other departments within the society find a good fit in technology, and you don't always see that non-technical people moving into technical roles, but these are technical product manager roles where they understand the processes and the systems well. So that's been good, but we have had a hard time filling roles, but I am glad to see, I like the one stat that I'm going to pull away, Andrew, is the only 22% of people are leaving jobs to pursue a higher salary, because people aren't going to get rich working for a nonprofit. But I think there's a lot of other advantages that we are offering. We have moved to fully remote for people. We have a really good PTO offering. So my hope is that we can bring people in. It's just, as unemployment is so low right now. There's a lot more open jobs than there are candidates. So I think that's our big struggle right now.
Gotcha. Thanks for sharing, Rhonda. Fernando, I think he might have had a question.
Yeah, it's less of a question, I guess, more of a comment, going back to the first question you asked. I'm the CTO of a small company out of Austin and live here in Boulder, but the team's pretty much remote. I think that as executives, it's critical that we push for, I'll call it almost table stakes, right? We talked about inflation. We did an inflation bump this year, and we're keeping on top of the macroeconomic trends, just like you mentioned there, Andrew. I think it's critical that you do things like that, just to keep up, right? I mean, if you're not doing that, someone gets a job offer, the delta between their current salary and the new job offer is going to be even bigger. And so I think it's critical that as you start thinking about budgeting for next year, if you're on a calendar year or whenever the budgeting process is, that you really think about, okay, where are we ahead? Where are we behind? And how do I start getting more money at the very least for the people that are critical to the organization? And hopefully everybody is critical at some level, but there's definitely some people who are more critical than others. And how do you then try to get ahead of it a little bit because you know people are going to get better offers. But like you said, I mean, most people that I've seen don't leave for the folks we've lost. They've not left. They've certainly gotten higher salaries, but that's not why they left, right? And I've been at the company now for about a year, and it's been interesting to see. We had this huge legacy system replacement project. It's just crushed people over the last year, and we've lost a lot of people because no one saw a light at the end of the tunnel for that project. And it's just interesting to see that. And I think also we're a company in the midst of change. So also depending on the stage of company you're at, I think it's critical to start thinking about, okay, what are we going to do, from a macroeconomic perspective to help people out? We invested in training this year. Like you said, Andrew, Udemy, there's a Udemy for Business that we're using. And I think it's one thing I think everything from my perspective these days is about maturity. Given where we were as an organization, it was really not about, hey, let's make people do a course on, Scrum or, data processing or whatever it is. It's like, well, just pick a course, right? I mean, maybe you need a little bit of escape and take a course on photography or baking or whatever it is, just to get whatever you need to recharge, right? Because it may not be, for some people, certainly they're driven by their work, but others are not. And for us, it's more important that we have a culture of learning and growth and development, and that can be in ways outside of work. And so just wanted to kind of put that out there that it is the whole, the macroeconomic things, the investment in people for things that they're interested in, right? It doesn't always have to be about the company. We've gone remote. Thing we've done now is we have weekly calls, and as part of every week, we've got a person who's part of HR whose job it is to try and figure out how do we engage people remotely, right? How do we run monthly contests, weekly contests, Halloween costume contests, right? How do we try to emulate some of those things remotely? How do we start driving certain things by individuals, certain things by teams? And they've done an amazing job. I got to shout out to our HR. They've done an amazing job from my perspective of trying to make the most of remote, because it is definitely challenging. So I'm gonna stop there because I've said a lot, but just wanted to share some of the things that we've done in these times to try to connect with people on a few different levels.
I think that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Fernando. I think one of the big things I think sometimes as leaders we all often forget how important it is to set that vision and that strategy right. I think people can kind of get on board with what it is, but I think sometimes if that's not clearly communicated and people don't understand that after maybe that legacy project that Fernando was talking about, like what is next, right? And so it's critical being transparent about where the organization is going and setting those goals, which is definitely important for sure. Other thoughts from anyone else? One thing I'll mention as well is that we are seeing, especially with the increase of salaries and trying to find talent. I know that the offshore model has been something that some folks have gone to, and they found out, probably more in the last couple of years, that going offshore is maybe not as inexpensive as it used to be, and there's also a lot of disruption just in terms of time zones and cultural alignment. And so we've developed some new partnerships with some nearshore models. I'm just curious if any of you guys have looked at nearshore. It seems like that's where a lot of companies are going these days, but obviously the benefit is that hopefully you're expanding your talent pool, still getting the benefit of lower cost resources. And again, if you're staff augmenting your teams, they're a little bit more aligned to the time zone and whatnot. But has anybody had experience with nearshore? No. Well, if you guys are interested in learning more, feel free to reach out to us. Happy to have conversations about it. Anyone else at all about questions, concerns, market activity? Happy to share. No? Well, cool. Well, hopefully this was beneficial, at least just kind of get an update. We'll be sending out the report. Ashley will be Goes a little bit more detail about where things are at and just kind of the responses we got from a lot of folks. But like I said, the good news is that, I think there's a lot of companies that are being, a number of companies are being negatively impacted, but it seems like a lot of those folks, and even the ones that we've been talking to on the recruiting side, right, is people are still actively interviewing and being hired at other places. So most of the folks that are being negatively impacted are being absorbed in other organizations. Unemployment's still at all-time lows. And so, whatever you guys can do to attract talent, and if we can help you with that, we're happy to do so too. So appreciate your time today, and thanks to anybody for joining. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yep. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Have a good day, you guys.
Thanks, Andrew.
Bye-bye.